Welcome to AFA 202, the African American Experience. I'd like to take a few minutes here to introduce myself, tell you a little bit about the class, and convince you that Black history matters. My name is Alix Heintzman. I'm originally from Kentucky, but I moved around a lot before circling back to Berea, where I now live with my husband and son in an old, kind of falling apart farmhouse that we're fixing up. I have my master's in history, focusing on race and power globally, and I teach part-time in the African/African American Studies program at EKU. So for the next 8 weeks, you and I get to read and talk about the Black experience in the U.S., or as the official catalog entry says, quote, the historical, social, political, economic, and cultural factors that have helped shape the experiences of African Americans in the United States, end quote. Now, people of African descent have been in North America for a long, long time. They were here before the United States existed. Technically, they were even here about 100 years before the famous Pilgrims settled in Jamestown. And it's not like Africans arrived in the Americas without any previous experiences. They were shaped by centuries of prior development on the African continent, which means we have to cover at least 500 years of dynamic history in about 8 weeks. Sure. To help make sense of it all, the class has been divided into 8 modules, which you should be able to find from the course homepage on Blackboard and in your syllabus. Each week-long module deals with a distinct time period in Black history, from slavery to the Civil War to Reconstruction, World War II, the Civil Rights era, and all the way up to the present. For every topic, we'll be reading from the textbook, reading and watching some digital materials, and discussing the most contentious and significant issues on the discussion board in small groups. It'll be fast-paced and intense, but in the end, you'll know the broad outlines of Black American history. But before we start, we also need to talk about you and why you're here. You're probably here for the same reason most Americans are in college courses, to complete a degree that will increase your economic and social opportunities. So you might be asking yourselves questions like, what does this class have to do with my major? Or how could it possibly be relevant to my future job? Or why is EKU forcing me to take it? And does Black history matter? So let's talk about that for just a minute. Number 1, employers want diversity and diversity training. Your future employers will probably find value in diversity-related courses on your transcript. A 2011 study in Forbes found that 85% of the multinational companies they surveyed said diversity was, quote, crucial to fostering innovation in the workplace. And they're not wrong. Study after study has indicated that socially diverse groups are better creative problem solvers than homogeneous ones. For job seekers of all backgrounds, a little racial awareness and historical understanding will help you function in the professional world. But there are bigger reasons to embrace African American history, like the fact that Black history is actually American history. It's at the very center of our larger American story. Our history has been shaped by Black contributions and experiences from our economy. Slave-grown cotton provided over half of all U.S. exports before the Civil War. To our technological development, Black Americans have invented more than just the cotton gin, including potato chips and the blood bank system. To our musical culture, where do you think banjos come from? To our literature, arts, politics, legal system, and literally every other aspect of American life. So if you think U.S. history matters, and it definitely does, then keep in mind what James Baldwin has said about it. American history is longer, larger, more various, more beautiful, and more terrible than anything anyone else has ever said about it. And Black history has been neglected for a really, really long time. Even though the African American experience has always been integral to the American experience, it hasn't always been acknowledged. In fact, it's been historically ignored, denied, misunderstood, and covered up. It's only the last few decades that we've collectively tried to correct those mistakes. And even now, it's often neglected. In 2010, only 2% of high school seniors could answer a simple test question about Brown versus Board of Education. National history standards for K through 12 only mention Black Americans in relation to the Civil War and civil rights, and Texas state standards no longer mention the KKK or Jim Crow. In one school district in Rhode Island, only 5% of their 2,000-page history textbook deals with any non-white histories or experiences at all. And 90% of the students in that district, by the way, are people of color. Even when it is taught and discussed, African American history is still steeped in centuries of racial assumptions and mistruths. Witness the recent history textbook that referred to enslaved Africans as, quote, migrant workers. So this class is, in part, a chance to talk more honestly about the past than we usually do. But this class is also a chance to talk more honestly about the present. Race is a subject of a passionate and important national conversation right now. It's been spurred by events like Ferguson, the shootings of Trayvon Martin and Tamir Rice, the Black Lives Matter movement, and even the lead crisis in Flint. Each one of these events is informed by a long, complicated, racialized hierarchy and history. And if you don't know those histories, you aren't prepared to participate in that conversation. And it's a desperately important one. And that's really my greatest hope for this class, that it engages us in this difficult, complicated, and vital dialogue, that we unbury buried pasts and start to dream of different futures. I look forward to getting to know all of you, and I hope you enjoy our conversations as much as I always do.